The shocking story of Wolfgang Schmidt, known infamously as the Pink Giant or the Beast of Belitz, begins in the rural area of East Germany. Between 1989 and 1991, Schmidt terrorized the Brandenburg woods and villages, driven by deeply twisted and escalating urges. His crimes were marked by extreme violence and disturbing fetishes. Born on October 5, 1966, near Potsdam, Schmidt grew up in the town of Lennon. His childhood was emotionally empty. His parents were constantly fighting and exhibited an emotional coldness toward their children, particularly his mother, who offered him no affection. The genesis of his dark fixation emerged when he was only 7 years old. Seeking an emotional connection he lacked, Schmidt began secretly entering his parents' room to find and handle his mother's pants. He later described feeling a sense of pleasure, an innocent yet powerful connection to the distant figure of his mother. This behavior quickly escalated into a deeply entrenched obsession. By his early teens, the acts became explicitly sexual and disturbing. He began to deliberately soil his mother's garments with urine, feces, and vomit before using them for self-gratification. When his mother discovered this, she hid her clothes and, along with his father, subjected him to heavy punishment, ridicule, and physical abuse, his father hitting him with a belt. Crucially, they chose punishment over psychological help, tragically solidifying the very urges they sought to eliminate. Before we continue in this tragic story, welcome to Crime Uncovered, where every case has a story, and the truth is often stranger and darker than fiction. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that button to stay updated on the latest true crime cases we uncover. And to our returning subscribers, thank you for your continued support. Don't forget to like this video so it reaches more people who care about the truth behind the headlines. So back to the case. The compulsion grew into what psychologists would later term coprophilia, a disturbing obsession with human waste. His habit deepened when, on trips to the forest dumps with his father, he would secretly return to dig up and perform rituals with discarded women's clothing. The urges were no longer a habit. They were a requirement. The need for control and gratification intensified until merely possessing the garments was insufficient. Schmidt began contemplating the need to involve an actual woman, someone compliant or, if not, someone he would take by force. Before his life of crime began, Wolfgang Schmidt maintained a semblance of normalcy. His dreams escalated after his father left the family just before Schmidt turned 18, plunging him into isolation, heavy alcohol consumption, and deeper fantasy. Yet, in public, he was perceived as shy and even nice, masking the dark transformation taking place within. In 1985, after graduating high school, Schmidt joined the riot police and served for 10 years. During this time, he became engaged to a young woman from a nearby village, successfully compartmentalizing his secret wants from his fiancée and the outside world. His job as a police officer provided him with order and power, which, coupled with the stability of his relationship, briefly allowed him to control his urges. He still secretly practiced his rituals, picking through trash and clotheslines, but the structure held him back from violence for a while. The fragile structure broke completely in April 1989. While drunk, Schmidt voiced strong political opinions, resulting in his immediate termination from the police force. The loss of his job, his source of order and identity, caused him to internally shatter. His urges returned with renewed, devastating strength. Stealing underwear was no longer satisfying. He needed more. In 1989, at age 23, Schmidt found steady work at a steel mill. On October 24, 1989, while biking to work, he felt the compulsion to hunt for underwear. He spotted a clothesline at a house near the edge of a forest in Dietz. As he crept toward the back, he saw Edeltraud Nitschke, a woman in her 50s, tending to her flowers. Later, Schmidt claimed he had initially only wanted to restrain her. He entered a shed, grabbed a rope and a hammer, and approached her from behind. Nitschke saw him and tried to fight back with a rake, screaming once. Schmidt immediately struck her repeatedly with the hammer until she lost consciousness. He dragged her inside, strangled her to death, and then pressed himself against her dead body. Even the act of killing was insufficient. He went upstairs, ransacked her closet, and stole some of her bras and knickers. In a sudden moment of panic, he wrapped her body in a blanket and attempted to dispose of it in the forest. However, people on the street saw him and yelled, asking what he was doing. Schmidt dropped the body and fled, feeling an intense, great rush from the experience, despite the failed disposal. He hadn't planned to kill that day, but the accidental violence made him immediately crave a repeat. When police arrived, they initially suspected a failed burglary. However, the gory details proved otherwise. Nitschke had suffered a severe, eye-dislodging strike, had been raped post-mortem, and pieces of women's knickers were found near her body in the forest. Nothing useful was stolen, proving the motive was not theft but darker sexual compulsion. Detectives realized they were facing a dangerous, likely repetitive killer. Their best clue was a boot print in the yard, identified as a military-issued shoe, similar to those worn by police officers. This suggested the killer might be one of their own. Tragically, in the chaos of the German Democratic Republics ending in 1989, the records necessary to trace the military boots were impossible to locate, and the trail quickly went cold. Wolfgang Schmidt was free, and his victim's husband died of grief in 1990, an indirect second fatality of the killer's first strike. Wolfgang Schmidt was free and actively hunting. On May 29, 1990, his urges led him to stop at a dump in the small town of Four. While engaging in his rituals, wearing soiled, inside-out pants, he was suddenly interrupted by Christa Na, a 55-year-old woman living in a caravan nearby. When Na saw him, she yelled, "What are you doing?" and attempted to push him away. Schmidt felt a profound sense of humiliation and anger at being caught, instantly deciding she had to die. He lost control, tore off his own pants, and chased her. Na initially broke free and ran, but Schmidt grabbed a loose electrical wire along the path. He caught her, pulled her to the ground, and used the wire to strangle her to death. He then dragged her body into the bush and sexually assaulted her corpse. At this moment, Schmidt crossed a critical boundary. The violence was no longer accidental. He had learned that assaulting dead bodies gave him intense pleasure. He knew his crimes would only worsen. He transitioned from reacting to situations to actively hunting women. Age and appearance were irrelevant. They were merely victims to satisfy his needs. Now aware the police might be after him, Schmidt began preparing for his kills. He created a murder kit containing a camouflage jacket, a knife, glasses, and a rope. To prevent blood from staining his skin, he would wear a leather apron over a bra and women's knickers under his jacket. He was ready to kill every time he left his house. On July 9, 1990, Schmidt, again performing rituals at a dump, spotted a 58-year-old woman walking by. Fully prepared, he approached her, brought out his knife, and stabbed her in the stomach. She screamed and collapsed, but she was still alive. Schmidt began dragging her deeper into the forest to finish the act and realize his ultimate fantasy. However, fate intervened. Someone nearby heard the woman's helpless cries and rushed to help. Schmidt was forced to abandon his victim and flee into the woods. The woman survived and healed, but she was unable to give the police a description of her attacker. Fearing capture, Schmidt went into hiding for 8 months, keeping his destructive urges suppressed while the public nicknamed him the Pink Giant. After 8 months in hiding, Wolfgang Schmidt returned to his horrific activities in 1991. On the evening of March 13, 1991, Inga Fischer, 34, was walking home alone after visiting a friend. Schmidt ambushed her, stabbing her in the back. He then brutally and repeatedly kicked her in the face until she collapsed. He dragged her to a secluded spot he had prepared beforehand and stabbed her until she died. The final, deeply disturbing act was an assault involving his own waste. He defecated on her and spread it over her body and face. Fischer's body was found a week later, on March 21st. Investigators were shocked by the crime scene, but it provided the first clear links between the previous isolated attacks. 3 victims had been raped post-mortem. Most importantly, police found adult magazines, women's clothing catalogs, and a pair of bright pink knickers near Fisher's body. The pink underwear was deliberately left behind, a signature left by the killer. With 3 murders and 1 attempted murder in a small area, police realized they were facing a serial killer. However, to prevent a national panic, officials initially kept the discovery quiet, only distributing handouts advising locals not to walk alone. This decision had devastating consequences. A Russian military family community nearby, who did not speak German, never received the warning. Just 9 days later, on March 22, 1991, Tamara Petrovskaya, 44, was walking home through the bush with her 3-month-old son in a pram. Schmidt attacked her, knocking her to the ground. As he began dragging her into the trees, the pram caused her infant son to cry. Schmidt reacted in the worst way possible. He grabbed the baby by the legs, hit him over the head with a tree, and violently kicked him in the stomach. The infant likely died immediately. Petrovskaya watched this horror before Schmidt returned to her, strangling her with her own knickers and gagging her with her bra. After she died, he placed the bra on her body. Her body was found the next day. The police instantly recognized the eerie similarities to the Fisher murder. Women's clothing, buried adult magazines, and the telltale pink knickers were all present. The police group was now certain they were chasing the same man, whom they dubbed the Beast of Belitz. The press gave him the nickname Pink Giant. The murders became national news, and police offered a reward of 3,500 Deutschmarks for information. Despite the immense pressure and a reward of 3,500 Deutschmarks, Wolfgang Schmidt remained free. He outwardly appeared to be a normal, trustworthy man. He had a steady factory job, a fiancée, and a regular circle of friends. Police searching the Brandenburg woods did find evidence of his secret rituals. Trash bags filled with women's clothes and adult materials, but they had no idea who was using them. Schmidt's compulsion was now completely uncontrollable. Just 2 weeks after the murder of Tamara Petrovskaya and her infant son, he attacked again. He was fully equipped. Wearing his leather apron over his bra and knickers, he hid near a forest road, waiting. He saw 2 12-year-old girls walking alone. In a major escalation, he was now prepared to kill 2 young people at once. He leaped from the bushes, a huge man dressed in knickers and an apron. He grabbed one teen and stabbed the other immediately. The girls fought back and one managed to escape. Unable to pursue both, Schmidt let the other girl go, perhaps viewing the result as a failure. Both teens survived the attack. When the police heard of the attack, they swarmed the area, but Schmidt escaped once more. This time, however, the 2 12-year-old survivors provided a clear, strong description. A composite sketch of the attacker was quickly created. The very next day, the sketch was on the front page of every newspaper across the country, and the reward for information was raised to 6,000 Deutschmarks. The national publicity did not deter Schmidt. He was now beyond the point of caring, driven by a frenzied, unstoppable urge. He attacked again the very next day, April 5, 1991, in the town of Fichtenwald. Dahlia Bremer, 66, was sleeping alone after taking pills. Schmidt was able to sneak into her house and find her bedroom. He went through her closet, removing her pants and scattering them around the room, which excited him. When the urge took over, he climbed onto her bed and choked her to death in her sleep. After she died, he sexually assaulted her body. When police investigated, they found no signs of forced entry and no valuables were taken, confirming his motive was purely to satisfy his darkest fantasies, not to steal. The entire region of Brandenburg was now paralyzed by fear, with women refusing to leave their homes alone and parents keeping children home from school. Stopping the Pink Giant was the police's paramount priority. Despite the accurate composite sketch being widely published, no one came forward to name Wolfgang Schmidt. He was not even considered a suspect, and police initially arrested several other men who were all found innocent. Schmidt temporarily ceased killing, perhaps sensing the growing tension, and outwardly returned to the appearance of a hard-working man, picking fruit and preparing for the birth of his own child. Internally, however, the urges persisted, lying dormant. The police, realizing they needed a new tactic, set a trap. They were aware of the secluded spots in the forest where the killer hid women's clothes and magazines for his strange rituals. They positioned officers near these spots, hoping to catch him in the act. Weeks passed with no success until August 1, 1991. A local man named Mike Clean was jogging through the forest when he stumbled upon a tent deep in the trees, surrounded by piles of women's clothing. Knowing about the serial killer's specific fetish, Clean grew immediately suspicious. Clean took a brave and dangerous step. He returned with a friend and a van to investigate. Approaching the tent, they saw adult magazines strewn on the ground. Inside the tent was a tall man, the Pink Giant, wearing women's clothes and pink boots. Thinking quickly, Clean maintained his composure and pretended to be from the Forestry Commission. He told Schmidt that camping there was forbidden, that he had caused a mess, and that Schmidt needed to come back to the van with them to fix something. Shocked, or perhaps ready for the end, Schmidt agreed to go without a fight. Clean and his friend drove him straight to the police station, ending the reign of terror. Upon questioning, Schmidt was described as shy and almost afraid. He answered questions directly and admitted to his involvement in the killings, without attempting to lie or deceive. Disturbingly, while he was not happy with his actions, he showed no remorse. The crimes were merely a means to satisfy his needs. His only concern seemed to be the press coverage of his gender identity issues and strange habits. Wolfgang Schmidt was tried on October 20, 1992, at the age of 26. The courtroom was packed as the media frenzy surrounded the trial of the Beast of Belitz. In court, he inexplicably retracted his confession, claiming the women were still alive and willing participants. He even stated he did not recall stabbing Tamara Petruskaya's 3-month-old son. Psychiatrists testified that Schmidt was profoundly troubled, suffering from a serious personality disorder. They argued that his delusion that the victims were alive was the only way he could feel gratification. Consequently, the judge ruled him criminally insane and found him to have diminished responsibility for his actions. When shown the composite sketch, Schmidt simply replied, "That looks like me, but it can't be me." Schmidt was found guilty of 6 murders and sentenced to a 15-year prison term, but he was committed to a psychiatric clinic instead of a regular prison, where he remains today. While incarcerated, photos emerged of him dressed as a woman, and his cell walls were adorned with pictures of men. He eventually sought therapy and, over time, accepted the reality of his murderous actions. In later reflections, he stated, "I still feel those urges. I am still a threat and I should never be freed." In 1997, Schmidt informed a reporter that he was now a woman, and in 2001, the courts officially recognized this change, legally changing his name to Beat Schmidt. By 2009, Beat began hormone treatment, stating that her breasts were her greatest pride. Though she had only an A cup, she expressed feeling more girly inside, enduring ridicule from other patients about her body, and was saddened by the complete abandonment of her family, saying her mother should have tried to help me, but she never did. Despite her transformation, judges denied her request for gender reassignment surgery. In 2010, Beat Schmidt was again in the news when she was granted supervised day release, an action that sparked widespread public outrage given the gravity of her horrific crimes. However, after more than 30 years of detention, certain rights were restored. The terrible case of the Pink Giant was one of brutality, compulsion, and a disturbing level of sexual obsession involving human waste, demonstrating the extremes of criminal depravity. Thank you for watching. Every victim deserves their story told. If you found this story shocking and heartbreaking, subscribe to Crime Uncovered and help keep their memory alive. What do you think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, keep questioning everything.